Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Language of Leadership. I am your host, Mark Iorio, and I have with me today Steve Spiro. Steve is an author, a speaker, a keynote speaker, and a podcaster. Actually, he's got his own broadcast show live, which is pretty cool.
Yes, sir.
How are you, man?
Excellent,
Great
Mark.
to see
Great
you.
seeing you. Yeah.
Thanks for driving all the way down from Stamford, Connecticut to be here. I appreciate that.
It was an honor. Worth the trip.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we'll make it worth the trip, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to talk about, this is a great subject, perfect for language of leadership.
Sure.
We're going to talk about breaking barriers and making human connections in a digital world.
That's right.
Something you know a lot about.
Absolutely.
And I really want to get started, Steve, in, first of all, thanking you for being here. But,
Of course.
But secondly, tell us about the journey that you've gone through to get to this spot.
Oh, how much detail you want here? Because it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started out as an introvert, born and raised in the Bronx, and, a lot of hurt in my life, bullied, picked on, and all that. And so because of that, it created I kind of became in the shell. I kind of locked myself into my own self, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
And basically my best friends were like Captain Kirk and Ralph Grandin from the Honeymooners. Those were my best friends growing up. I mean, I just literally would come home and go into my room. That was it, right? And so it was a crazy journey. And then I decided to go into advertising. I had some talent. Thought I was going to be looking at a drawing board most of my life, but then I wound up moving up the ranks into owning a company, and I started to have to reach out to people, and then eventually got into the marketing world, and it just I started to see that there was actually people out there. My feeling for a long time was it'd be a great world if it wasn't for people.
Yeah, right.
But then I got into the martial arts. That started that journey, and started to learn how to kick some butt, defend myself, got some confidence. I did speak a little bit that way, but basically, I'd rather beat you up than talk to you in the martial arts as well. So for a very long time, I just really didn't want to have to deal with anyone. And when I had my advertising company, my partner said, "Hey, we got some good news." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, the company is going to send you to Dale Carnegie, the course."
Oh, wow.
I'm like, "Okay, great." And then basically what he's saying was, you have people skills that suck, basically.
Yeah.
And so that started the journey, and I started to, do whatever I can, but I really was horrible. I was the guy that said, you're wrong, like, all the time. It wasn't like, oh, I know how you feel. Let me tell you how, if I was in your shoes, I'd feel the same way. Let me tell you what I found.
Yeah.
None of that. No people skills. And I knew that to get up the ranks in the business world, I had to do a little bit, be better in the people skills side of things. So enters a mentor in my life, and he challenged me to meet 3 strangers every day. And that was crazy, especially in the New York area. You talk to strangers, you're going to get shot, kidnapped, or killed.
All right.
But I did it, still do it to this day, and it stretched me, it challenged me. And so that started a journey of growing a network. And I got into some networking groups. I started to get big on LinkedIn. And it was the starting point. But I started to feel that there was barriers. And as the world became very digitized, the barriers seemed to be even more pronounced, and getting through to people and being able to create connection. And so it wasn't until COVID where I started to really craft these skills. I was doing a lot of Zoom calls, right, video calls. We were locked down, and I started to realize there's a real art and skill to this, and a lot of the things I've been learning along the way. My mentor challenged me, got me into books and audios and networking, obviously, and basically started to see there were ways to create real connection, and so I started to really study that, start to look at what people responded to, and I felt during the lockdown of COVID, I felt more connected than I had in my entire life. And I was having these conversations where people were bawling, they were crying on these Zoom calls. I'm like, interesting, like I may have hit something, right? People were they would say to me, "Steve, I'm telling you things I've never told anyone in my entire life."
Wow.
And so here I was recently on a podcast. So I also, besides having my own show, I also guest on people's shows. And a nice guy like you, right? Very confident guy, we're talking. I'm sharing some of these vulnerabilities and insecurities of what what I like to talk about. And he said, I'm going to be a little vulnerable myself. I'm going to tell a story about myself a little bit. And he did, and he started to bawl. Like, he got all teary-eyed and
Wow.
welled up. He didn't cry, but you could tell he was about to.
Sure.
And I didn't call him on it in the middle of the broadcast, but I was like, can I ask you afterwards? I said, does that ever happen on your show? He said, never. I said, all right, I did my job. Because it's getting people to really open up.
Yep.
Right? It's, to me, what true connection is when it's when the two kids are, playing in the sandbox, getting to know each other. Forget the pitch. Pitching is just, it's how do you break that barrier and really start to talk to people? Because we all know the expression, right? People do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Sure.
However, a lot of us tend to start with the pitch. They start with I call it the what do you do dance. When you meet somebody, you have a networking call or coffee. So tell me what you do. I call it the what do you do dance, right?
Yeah, of course.
I said, can we flip that a little bit?
Back up a little
Yeah,
bit.
can we just tell, I'd love to hear your story, and I'll tell you mine. And people love to talk about themselves. I mean, the best topic that people that you heard straight out of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends, is people's best topic is themselves. Their most favorite word in the entire language is their name, right? So, and I learned that just through talking to people, and then the other piece of it was, and then I'll shut up, I guess. But the other piece is being others focused and learning that to give and to be to be able to be a go-giver. I love the book The Go-Giver by Bob Burke. So those are some of the key things that I found in really truly breaking connection, breaking barriers to create real human connection.
I mean, that phrase, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. What are some of the key factors here, Steve, in terms of, we talked about this we've talked about it a couple times. We chatted about it before the show today. Oftentimes it's about language. It's about the words. It's about not just the words, but then the action. And that what do you do dance that you talk about, it's funny, but it's not funny because it's really sometimes kind of annoying. I had a guy come at the end of church. I'm not joking. At the end of church, I'm walking out with my family. This is years ago, and he came up to me. He said, "Mark, we need to meet for like a business meeting,
Talk shop or something."
Yeah, I mean, we're in church, for God's sakes. Don't you? Why don't you just say, "Hey, give me a call. We should have coffee," or something like that. But language and behavior is so critical, Steve, to breaking that barrier.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I on stage I talk a lot about this, and I have a background after the advertising industry. I had 20 years of heavy sales, business to business sales.
Yeah.
And you hear about the WIFM.
Yep.
What's in it for me? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people don't want to, if you come at them and they feel like you're about to try to get something from them, they're not going to do it. So you want to figure out, hey, listen, I might have something that you'd appreciate. Let's chat. Maybe now might not be the right time, but what's a good time where we can grab some coffee, right? So there's, that's a little bit of a softer way to approach, to take the same approach, but just in a way that you might feel, oh, this guy might have something that could value. And you didn't say business-wise per se.
Yeah.
The implication might be there.
It might be.
Yeah. But the other piece is this, right? That there's also, you said it's not just the language, but it's also your actions. Are you looking at the person, looking in their eye?
Yeah.
Are you nodding when they speak?
Exactly.
Are you doing all those things that I know that we were talking about it before the show started about how people are wanting to come back together again and do a lot more in person. That's true. But there's also techniques that I've learned, and I hate saying techniques because it makes it sound manipulative, but how to really connect on screen, on camera, right? When you're doing a Zoom or Teams call, a video call, how do you do that? And it's looking at the camera, right? And many people have a screen here. Unfortunately, their eye goes there instead of there. So it's just making sure that you're making them feel like they really are being heard.
I think personally that that's a gift, and you have it. You have that gift.
Appreciate that.
We hear a lot of times the superpower stuff and all that, and that's kind of goofy, that whole thing about superpowers. But
Yeah.
I get it. I understand. You have a gift, and your gift is that you can make that human connection. You got great eye contact. You're sincere in the way you look at people, and there's a different technique when you're in person
Oh yeah.
than if you're on screen.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about breaking barriers and making a human connection in a digital world,
Yeah.
it's not easy. And,
Yeah.
and we even talked about, not to interrupt you, but we
No, you're
even
fine.
talked a little bit about in-studio interviews versus Zoom interviews,
right.
right? I'd much rather, thank God you drove 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes to get here. I love having you in the studio.
I appreciate that.
But there's a difference, right?
Is a total difference.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, I like talking about this on stage is this, we are in a very connected world right now, right?
Yeah.
It's very connected, but it's also extremely disconnected. The screen has created a barrier.
Yeah.
So how do you break that barrier? And a lot of the things we're speaking about is how you do that, right? Yeah. Through good eye contact, even though it's through camera, right? It's listening, it's not having an agenda, being others. All those things are important to that. But I appreciate you saying I am gifted. If you knew me 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you'd say I'm not gifted because I had to grow these skills. So I want people to know, if you're listening to this, that you could do this too, right?
Right.
Like if this introvert that had the personality of watching paint dry, could do this, anyone could do it. And I speak about it in my book and I talk about it on my show, and it's just a big part of what I believe is so important that's missing today. It's been missing for a long time, but I think now more than ever, and we were talking about the younger generation, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to, if you don't be offended, I'm not labeling, right? But the generation of today, often this is the same people that were, sitting on their couch next to their best friend at their house, texting each other rather than speaking. And, so there's so much that we need this so badly to create real connection.
Yeah.
There's so much pitching going on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what? And this is the phrase I'm going to say is with a P. There's a lot of pitch slapping going on right now.
Yeah.
Right? We got to ditch the pitch.
Yeah, ditch the pitch. We talk about this disconnected world out there, even though it's connected, but we're disconnected.
Yeah.
Just why do you think that is?
I think it has to do with because and maybe COVID kind of created it, right? I mean, I remember getting out in the environment, back when the COVID did, and people had masks on. You're like, ooh, Yeah. And I think the screen has given us, it's created a barrier. And I think it's so funny that you get these emails or text messages from people sometimes, and they could be a little sharp, sometimes edgy, sometimes nasty.
Absolutely.
But when you get to speak to them in person or on the phone, they're as nice as day. It's like they have these, I've heard it called, email muscles, right?
Yeah.
Because they feel like they can hide behind the screen.
Sure.
It's a lot easier to, you're hearing people breaking up with people, even getting divorces through text. It's crazy, right? Because it's a lot easier, it's safer, because you're not looking at somebody, looking them in the eye. So I think what's happened is people are, taking the easy way out. And that's human nature, right? When something is simple and easy, you go the path of least resistance.
Right.
You want to know why? I heard this recently. Why humans typically take the path of least resistance? Metabolically, we're made up of, I want to say, like 95% water. Scientifically proven, right?
Yep.
And if you ever seen water, it always seeks the path of least resistance.
Yeah, sure.
So we go the path of least resistance.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. A lot of barriers. Lots of barriers. We're gonna talk about a little bit more about that, and then your book right after this message.
Appreciate
Folks, we got more with Steve Spiro after this message from our sponsors right here on Language of Leadership. Don't go away.
A tale is told of a star that fell in the days when men were hair-covered brutes roaming the earth. This shard of celestial steel was unlike anything early man had ever encountered. And from those 5 fortuitous stainless steel blades came the world's first smooth, silky shave. And it was in that moment manliness burst into existence. This blade charged forward through the ages of steel and dragonfire. Great conquerors slew tyrants. Founding fathers revolted. And as men's manes were tamed, so they tamed the wild frontier. Also, Steve used it to get a good shave, and he's a pretty solid guy. But as power often breeds enemies, so a wild-bearded philosopher despised the blade for its glorious manly freedom. This enemy of clean shaves bore the razor to a fiery peak and cast it in. The blade was gone. A dark age of unmanliness ensued, an age of men wearing buns, drinking vegan milkshakes, and wearing really tight pants and acting like a bunch of crybaby commies. Until one day, the great archaeologist and CEO Jeremy Boring went on a dangerous quest on which many before had perished. Through seas, mountains, and deepest catacombs, he found the blade still sharp as starlight. His mission was to restore the blade to mankind and thereby restore manliness.
Will my razor make you as manly as the actual greatest men in all of human history? I guarantee it will. In the most emphatic way that isn't legally binding. Hey, at least you'll be as manly as Steve.
Jeremy's razors. Carve out your legacy.
Thanks for getting these sub bowls.
Of course, no problem, big bro. Let's eat.
Danny DeVito? What did you do with our uncle?
Well, that doesn't matter. This is a commercial for Jersey Mike's. What matters most are these sub bowls.
Wait, has Danny DeVito been my brother my whole life?
I guess so. Don't tell Mom. Your favorite sub, hot or cold in a bowl. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
Let's go to our next segment, Fairest Calls, inspired by Geico's fair and fast 24/7 claim service.
Do we have to do the Geico step on them here?
Yep, we do. Let's play the clip.
Holding, number 53, 10-yard penalty.
This literally happens every game. Can we just skip to the action?
Nope, nothing but fair and fast claims, just like Geico. Here's the next clip.
But I don't play the clip.
Pass interference, number 34.
Wow, doesn't get any fairer than this, boys.
For savings and service, get more with Geico.
Welcome back to Language of Leadership. I'm your host, Mark Iorio, and I've got with me today Steve Spiro. Steve is an inspirational speaker. He's also an author, and he's also a broadcaster of a live podcast. And the author part is, I know we're going to put this up digitally later on, but the Tao of a Master Connector. And, you know, I think you've been on a couple of the shows before,
Yeah.
In the studio, and I was on your Master Connector, event last week. It's impressive.
I appreciate
Very
that.
impressive.
Yeah, not almost as impressive as the fact that the commercial, the shaving cream and the shaving, the razor, and
They did that for you.
I think they maybe I got to get the stubble off or something. I don't know. Because last time I was on the show, I had
You
hair.
actually had hair,
and now I don't.
If anyone could see this, I don't know. He's got a little bit of hair.
Little left. That was partially why I took it off because it wasn't much left.
Wasn't a whole lot left. But right before the break, we were talking about barriers. So many barriers out there, and I keep thinking, Steve, that it started years ago. It drove me crazy. I ran a marketing firm for a long time, right?
Remember, yeah.
And trying to sell. Now you got voicemail, right? And then you had email.
Oh yeah.
And then, now you got the cell phone, and now you know who's calling because their number comes up.
Social media.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
So
then
many
you
ways.
talked about social media muscles, or
Yeah.
email muscles
Right.
or message muscles.
Yeah.
How about social media?
Oh, it's even worse. I mean, yeah, you gotta. Yeah, I've tried really hard to keep my opinions to myself because you can really create, you divide people, and to me, it's all about in business, right? You want to attract, you don't want to repel. So
Right.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So how do you overcome those barriers? That's one of the key things that you talk about. As
Sure.
an inspirational speaker, it's to get people to kind of overcome those obstacles. And you had to overcome a lot of stuff when you were
Yeah.
a kid and
Well, as a kid,
young
and
adult.
martial artist, right? I mean, I learned how to break barriers with grit through, trying to fight people that were way bigger than me, stronger than me. But, in reality, what I realized is, especially, and I've had a background in the business development space for a very long time, the barrier today is trying to reach, number one, get in touch with somebody.
Right.
Right? How do you get in touch with that high-level C executive?
Exactly.
It's just super hard, right? Back in the day, before the internet, before technology, you would reach somebody, you had to get through a gatekeeper, but they would take your call because you were the gatekeeper of the information. Today, they're not going to, it sometimes takes 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20 touches to get through. And when you do get through, often they're ready to buy because they're already informed already because they can go online and learn about stuff.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to get through. And so one of the things I speak about on stage is how to get through. And, and you got to be a little creative. And a lot of times it's through people, a lot of times it's having a credible LinkedIn profile because, when they go on, everybody, when they reach out to, when people are reaching out to them, the first thing they're going to do is go see what this person's all about. And they're going to look on LinkedIn. And
Right.
if you've got an intriguing, well put together profile, they may take you seriously. Especially if you have a large network, right? I know you have a pretty good sized network as well. If a C-level executive goes on and sees that you're connected to 30, 40, 50 other C-level executives that are similar to them, they may, oh, maybe I need to speak to this person, right? So there's all sorts of things, and we don't have enough time on the show to get into all of it, but it's how to get through. And then the second barrier is once you get them, that typical, all right, so what do you got,
Yeah,
right? That barrier
sure.
of that, and how do you break that? And a lot of that is just, again, is that human connection. How do you break the barrier? And so I talk a lot about that through, again, being vulnerable, right? Being others focused, and making sure that you're there to find out what they need versus what your agenda is and what you're looking to get from them, right? And listening and someone trying to find out their pain points. So that's a barrier. And then, obviously you're talking about in the introversion space, right? As a recovering introvert, because I'm still an introvert, there's that barrier as well. And we see a lot of people, the engineer types, no offense if you're an engineer, right? But the engineers that they'd rather, I was like that, I'd rather talk to a screen than, or not talk to anybody, right?
Yeah.
And how do you get through that? Because I think people realize to grow. I mean, I remember reading, I believe it was Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. There was a piece in there where he talks about that companies will pay for money, for a lot of money for employees that know how to get along with people versus people that are very technically driven and have a lot of great knowledge. So there's many barriers that you could break through to really create human connection, and really it will benefit you if you can. For sure.
Your story is it's not only intriguing, but it's inspiring because there are a lot of people out there that are watching us right now that give up. They give up, and you talk about grit, you talk about perseverance, you talk about stick-to-itiveness.
Yep.
But a lot of times that first barrier that you were talking about, is like I just called the guy. I called him. Like I emailed them. Yeah. Okay, that's a start.
Yeah.
But because they're able to, I don't know if maybe if you change your mindset out there, Steve, if people start to think differently, like they're not hiding from me. They actually need my help.
Yeah. They just don't know it yet.
They don't know it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Talk about grit. Talk about that perseverance.
That's a great topic, and I love talking about it because to me, that's the separating factor of most people. I like to talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about it on a show, which is, and I heard it from my mentor years ago. He said, if you don't quit, you win. right? Nobody wants to fight somebody who just won't give up, right?
That's true.
And so if you just keep going, right? And my feeling is, over years I've learned that if you just don't quit, eventually it's gonna come to pass, or you're gonna. My mentality is, I'm gonna figure out a way, right? And I'm dyslexic, learning disabled, so I love Audible and I do read books. And I listen to books nowadays, but my feeling is, and I've learned this through my dyslexia, through my disabilities, is you figure out a way, right? If you've got a barrier, if there's a boulder in front of me, I'm gonna figure out, okay, how do I break through it? How do I go over it, go around it, go under it? I'm gonna figure out a way. But there is a way. You just gotta keep going and not give up. And it's so important. And I think there's so few people. You're right. A lot of people in the business development world, they do a few emails. They're like, or they, even if you're looking for a job, I sent out a bunch of applications. Okay, well, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Don't stop. Yeah.
And by the way, maybe applications isn't the key here, because if you do the research and you'll see the statistics that most jobs are gotten through people that they knew, like networking. So do the applications, but leverage LinkedIn, leverage your network, and see who you can figure out how to reach people. Go to networking events.
Right.
I told a friend who's now a really good friend, I've mentored him, and he basically was looking for a job and he wanted to get in sales. I said, well, you want to get in sales? Show up at the company. Show up with a resume, put a nice suit on, the person's name of the company, and just show up and say, I'm here to see John, or whatever his name is, right? And just show up. Because if you're supposed to be a salesperson, show them what it means to be the language of leadership, right? And through actions, well, that's some action, right? Take action.
Exactly.
Right, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love it. I love the boulder analogy. I always use the wall, right? If there's a wall there, I'm going to figure out how to go under it, over it, or through it, or around it, right?
And a mentor said, or you talk to the right person and they'll show you, hey, there's something to the right a little bit. It's called a door.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Go right to the door. Sometimes you need somebody to mentor you, coach you, and help you.
I read a story a long time ago about a fly. If you ever watch a fly, like a housefly, they'll bang into a screen constantly, and all they have to do is turn around and go the other way, and there's an open door. But they will bang into that screen constantly. Now, we don't want to equate our intellect to a fly's intellect. So think about how to do that, how to go through that boulder, around the boulder, or maybe there is a door there.
No doubt.
Talk about first of all, talk about the future and what this inspirational speaking is in your future, and talk a little bit about the broadcast show.
Sure.
And
I
then
appreciate that.
talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah, no doubt. So one of the things that I realized, Mark, is that, as an introvert, as somebody who's been broken for many years, and fortunately through networking and mentorship, and by the grace of God, I was able to get out of that, and to get out of that dark place into a better place. And I really want to inspire people, and that's why inspirational speaker, right? Motivation is something that's self-generated, but inspiration, somebody can inspire you to take action, and that one step can inspire them to go to the next step. I just recently did a post. I'll talk about my show in a minute, but the post was how I led to having the show and becoming a speaker. And I said yes to something, which then said yes, it led to something, and I said yes to that, and it just, so the one thing that can inspire you, right? But my vision is to be the light, uplift, inspire, and encourage, to be paid to travel the world, speak and inspire, and be a beacon of light. And so everything I'm doing in my life is really geared towards that end goal. And writing the book was another piece of that puzzle, right? Of course, I love being on stages. It's way better. I mean, I'll take it. I don't mind being on a screen. Obviously, I appreciate this, but being able to touch, press against flesh, if you will, right, and be in front of people and see the reaction is nothing better than that. So being on stages, and of course, I'm a big foodie. I love traveling. So you put two things together. It's awesome. So that's the vision of what I really want to do, and just enjoy that big time. But then the book is obviously I'm in talks with the sequel of the book. But the book is The Tao of a Master Connector, the Tao meaning the way or path of. It's a way, and the subtext is the way an introvert became a master connector.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that, and it's parables and stories of a way someone like myself, an introvert, became a master connector.
Yeah.
So and last thing I'll say is this: the show when we're doing this broadcast today, we're at the 200th episode.
Wow.
This coming week, and so it's been amazing. I've got a new co-host, not new so much. I started with a gentleman named Cameron Toth, who was incredible for me. One of those yeses. I opened the door to that, and then now my friend of 25, 26 years, Rob Genovese, is now my co-host, and that's been wild. I think we're like 55 shows in now as a partnership, but it's crazy to know that we're at 200 episodes.
200, that's
it's
great.
crazy. We've had amazing guests on our show. It's been incredible. Dr. Dre, we had Bob Berg, we had a gentleman named Ruben Gonzalez, former Olympian, I think 6-time Olympian, the luge.
Wow.
It's incredible the people we've had on our show, and just keeps getting better and better. So excited for the future.
Well, that's great. I mean, listen, the way you inspire people by talking about where you've come from and where you are now, and how to break those barriers and really make those human connections. And I meant what I said earlier, Steve. You could look in your eye and you could see that you're gifted. You have that connection, that human connection to people, and that means a lot. And I can see why that fellow who was hosting a show recently, and you said he started to well up, I can see it happening.
Almost happened to you.
Never happened. Almost. Well, thanks. I really appreciate you being here,
really
driving down and sharing your story and inspiring so many people. So
Absolutely.
would you do me a favor and tell everyone how to get in touch with you?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate it. So thank you again, Mark, for having me on the show. It's been amazing. If you want to reach me, simple way is stevespiro.com. You can also go to, if you're looking to bring me on as a speaker, it's spiro-global.com. I love LinkedIn. I've got 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, you'll just see Steve Spiro Master Connector. It's right there. If you're interested in checking out our show, the Master Connector Show, go to masterconnector.show. But I'd love to connect with you. By the way, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, know this: you're going to get a message saying, let's jump on a call. Because to me, why be connected if you don't know much about each other? And that we can only do that by getting on a call. So I'd love to connect with you. And this has been incredible. I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, that is a wrap for Language of Leadership. Steve does have 30,000 connections. It's amazing. And he meets with everyone. So check him out, Steve Spiro, right?
Absolutely. Steve Spiro, the Master Connector.
The Master Connector. All right, folks, that's a wrap for Language of Leadership. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.